Once again, you are welcome. I'm thrilled to have you here today for this Data Analysis Masterclass. Over the next hour and a half, over the next 2 hours, we're going to dive into some tools, or we call them the powerful tools that can transform the way we work with data. It doesn't limit you whether you're in finance, you're in marketing, you're in operations, or any other field that relies on data-driven decision making. I think this session would be good for you or would be beneficial. So, would you? What are our objectives? I'm hoping that after this session, my objective is very simple: to give you a hands-on introduction to data analysis using Excel, SQL, and Power BI. And we'll look at how these tools can help you extract insights, streamline your workflows, and make better decisions. So by the end of this session, I'm hoping that you have a clearer, that is, if you have some understanding of how these tools work together. If you don't, then you have a clear understanding of how these tools work together and why they are essential skills for anyone looking to thrive into what we call today's data-centric world. Once you want to thrive in this data-centric world, I believe that you need these skills. At least from these 3 tools, you should have these skills. Yeah. But someone would ask, why is it even important to even go into this data analysis at all? And there's this word or this phrase that I think has been used so much, saying that data is the new oil. Why are we saying that? Because it's everywhere and it's incredibly valuable. I would say that we have access to large amounts of data that we hardly utilize. Right from our organizations, from our personal use of data, we have, but I would more focus on the organizations. That organizations collect large amounts of data and we hardly do anything with it. It just sits on some database or some data warehouse somewhere and nothing happens to it. It doesn't help in any analysis, not any forecasting, not to understand the trends or patterns in the business operations. And I think that there's more we can do with the data or even the little data that we have access to. In the business environment, looking at how fast-paced it has been, the ability to analyze and interpret data, I don't think it's just an advantage. It's actually a necessity. So whether you are working in a startup or a multinational corporation, I think that data-driven decision-making is the key or one of the keys to staying competitive. It also helps in optimizing process and then and driving growth as an organization. Companies across all industries are collecting vast amounts of data. But I'm sure you also agree with me that raw data on its own isn't that much useful. It's the ability to analyze that data, find patterns, and draw actionable insights. That's what really matters. So it's not just having the data. It doesn't say much. What are you doing with the data? Are you able to analyze that data? After analysis, are you able to draw find some patterns in there and draw some insights out of the data? That's more important. So this is where data analysis comes in. It turns raw data into meaningful information. I remember when we started learning about computers, they always talk about the when the data is processed, it becomes information. And at that time, it was sounding like, okay, what kind of processing can we do on the data? A lot of processing goes in, can be performed on the data, and to transform it to become information. And here, I think it's not just about producing information; it should be meaningful, because a lot of the times we come up with some information that might not necessarily be beneficial to the audience or the target audience. It could be good information, all right. It could be meaningful to a certain set of people, a certain category of people, but it might not be very meaningful to some other category of people who probably might be the target audience. So we should look at that. And we said that it also enables businesses to predict trends, to understand customer behavior, to streamline operations, and then make informed decisions that drive success. Ultimately, it should make informed decisions that drive success. Let me just pick one example. So let's say you are a shop owner. Okay, not a shop owner. You produce fashion items, clothing, shoes, bags, and all this other stuff. And you are distributing it to across regions, different regions. You might be, at the start, you might be tempted to start sending out the same amount of each category of products that you are selling to all the various regions that you want to sell to. So if it's a bag of clothing, it goes across all regions. If it's a bag of shoes, but after some months, you should be able to thrive on that data to, first of all, understand the customer behavior, and then to predict the trends. Why are we understanding customer behavior? Because you can be able to tell if, let's assume there are 4 regions, region A, B, C, and D. You send the same amount to all 4 regions, and then you realize that region B is asking for product 2 after 2 months. Region D is asking for product 1 after 3 months. In the next consignment, I don't expect you to send the same quantities of products to all 4 regions at the same time. If you do that, that means you are not really analyzing the data, or probably predicting the trends. This kind of things would help you to make informed decisions, and that will help drive the success of the organization. It's very key. So, what does the data analyst do? Oops, very good. Okay, so whilst I'm going through this, if you have any questions, you can just type it into the chat, or you can just type it into the chat. I would be checking on the chat and see what conversations are going on there. If there are any that I could address, I would quickly point it out here. At the end of the session, too, we'll still take some questions and answers anyway. What does a data analyst do? I'm saying that the first item here is to define the problem. I think this is the very key step that you need to take as a data analyst. Why are you concerned about defining the problem? I mean, as a data analyst, you are just there. The client comes that, okay, I need this done. I need this done. I mean, sometimes you think that, okay, let me just do what the customer wants or what the client wants. But it goes beyond that. A lot of the time, the client doesn't even know exactly what they want. The problem or the kind of results they are looking for, the solution they are looking for is very vague to them. and they will need some guidance. And it happens across. There are people, okay, so someone will come that I want a website, I want a software. And you start asking questions and you realize that they don't even know what they want. And in software engineering, there's something we call requirements elicitation. So as a data analyst, I think that you need to have that skill of eliciting requirements from the client or from the customer, because determining the client needs is very key. You see that here, operating determine the client needs. It's not just about the client giving you the information, because you would hardly get it that way. You need to find the right questions. There are techniques that are used in eliciting requirements. There are times that you find some people would conduct interviews, and some people would use surveys to get their information. Some people will just observe the documents, or probably observe the behaviors, either behaviors of the people in operation or using a system. Then you can better determine the needs of that particular client. So defining the problem is very key. If you're unable to define the problem, you might end up solving the wrong problem or giving the right solution to the wrong problem at the end of it all. So it's very key. So create a plan of action and then communicate the plan to the team. And here I would highlight communicate the plan to the team, because most of the time you'll be working collaboratively. It's very key to this task. As a data analyst, you need to understand the data from your perspective, which most of the time you would understand because you would have that technical mindset, but you would have to understand it from the customer mindset as well. How does the customer understand this data that you think that it's in this format? For example, maybe there's a data that has been given to you. You are seeing that data to be a numeric data, or a numeric data, or an alphanumeric data. But then the customer assumes that data should be purely alphabet and not numbers. So that collaboration would have to be there. You need to consult and have discussions and communicate whatever decisions you take as a team. You need to communicate to the whole team, very key. The second point is collecting the data. So you need to collect the data from multiple sources. I mentioned the various sources or the techniques that you can use that could influence the sources. And then you work with the programmers to create the ETL processes. So when you are working with the data, you'd understand that the data doesn't go directly into the database through some means. It is from an interface, most likely a software interface. You don't have people entering data into the database directly. There are a lot of reasons why that wouldn't happen, because you would want to have the data go in a particular way. The data should be structured in a particular way. The data should be formatted in a particular way, and even for security reasons. So you'd want to ETL, you are extracting, transforming the data, you're loading the data. That whole process, you need to work with programmers, because they are working on the interface that is taking the data from the user and then putting that data into the database. So all of this comes in. They need to aggregate the data, put the data together, and then it goes through some cleaning process. How do we clean? First, you need to standardize. With the standardization, I would normally look at the data type, the kind of data that is going in. So for dates, you would want your data to be formatted in a particular way. If it's a telephone number, if it's an email address, you'd want to look at all of this. And then you go into the normalization processes. Normalization is simply trying to put your data into a format that is of good quality. One of the simplest ways of, or the basic ways of starting the normalization process, I would say, is ensuring that all your data items or entities have a key. A key here, I'm talking about a primary key. A primary key is what uniquely identifies the data that you're storing in your database. If your data goes in there without that unique key, it could be problematic because when you are now performing the analysis, trying to retrieve the data, you would have difficulties or challenges, let me put it that way. So it's always important to go through the normalization process. In the database creation, the normalization process has about 3 stages. There's the first, the second, and then the third normal form. And then there's one called what's called normal form. But most of the time, the 3 stages are what we use. Then about the cleaning of data. When we get into Excel, I'll do some excerpts on cleaning the data. Validation is also very important. Validation comes with ensuring the kind of data that's going in there and looking at the various constraints that you can put on your data. So for example, if it's a name, it's a first name or last name, you don't expect numbers to be in the name. If it's an email address, there should be that @ symbol in there. If it's a date, you should have the year column, the month column, and then the day column. So all of these would ensure that accurate data is going into your database. If the data that goes into the database is erroneous, I can tell you for a fact, whatever analysis that will be performed would also contain those errors. So it's important to clean up your data before they go into the database. Then you need to set up your data for reports. Set up your data for reports and visualizations. The first item here is creating the views. What are we talking about when we say views, creating views? There's a centralized database. All the data is going into that central database. Everybody has access to the data, but it doesn't mean that we all have access to the same set of data. If I take, let's say, the data in a university environment, for example, the view of the student would be different from the view of the lecturer. That of the lecturer will be different from, let's say, the HR guys. The HR guys would be different from the finance guys. But they are all sourcing their data from the same central pool of database. This means that a view has been created for the students, for the lecturer, and even for the lecturers. You'd also know that, let me take the student. The student, you have access to only your details, the courses that you are taking as a student. The same as a lecturer. The lecturer has access to details about the courses that he or she is teaching. So it creates, the database allows you to create all these different views. You need to format the data. Why? Because, for example, in a database, the date is stored as Y, 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 M, M, and DD. But when you are displaying a report, most likely you will not display it in this format because people are not used to reading dates in this format. So you need to format the data that is coming out of the database so that it's readable or it's understandable or it makes more sense to the user. It's very important. And then you need to filter the data to the to the subset you need. You don't always have to retrieve all the data sets at once. It might not be necessary. If you need, let's say, in an employee database, if you need the list of employees and their emails, you don't need to do a select star or a select all from employees table for it to display from employee ID, employee first name, last name, everything about the employee. You don't need all of that. You use just something like a where clause to filter out the data that you need. So depending on what you need at the point in time. And the last bit on creating reports and visualizations. The data analyst is very much involved in this. You automate the repos in SQL. We'll be talking about SQL in the subsequent slides. You need to connect data to the data visualization tools. Here we'll be looking at Power BI. Power BI allows you to connect data either from Excel or from SQL. You can connect from both ways into Power BI, and then it generates the visualizations for you. Then the last one is you make sure this solves the above defined problem. And that means that we are going back, or we are tracing back to the problem that was defined here. There are lots of the times where in the process of working on the data, you might lose track of the problem that was defined at the beginning. So it's important to go back and be sure that the data that you are generating or the reports or visualization that you're generating, it actually solves the problem that was defined at the beginning. I would say that even right across along the way, you should be checking that. Don't wait till the last end to make sure that this is solving the problem. Else it will be a lot of time wasted, and it would be better to be doing that along the way so that by the time you are here, it makes it easier to be sure that you have got to that place. You've really provided a solution to the problem. Yeah. Okay. Okay, so let me move on to the roadmap for a data analyst. The roadmap for a data analyst. I'll take it from the bottom here, where you need to learn the basics. You need to understand the core statistics and Excel for data handling. In the statistics, we might not go too deep in this masterclass. They are very basic ones, some average. There are things that Excel does for you. There are so many functions. I always say that Excel has so many functions that we don't even get to explore. So we'll look at some of these functions that would help to create these analysis or get a basic understanding of how Excel works. Then you need to master SQL. SQL is essential. You can't do without it. SQL would always be there because the data that you are going to analyze is stored in the database. You need SQL to be able to write the queries to fetch the data from the database. So even if you are not creating the database and the database has been created already with the data in it, you need to write select statements to retrieve the information. If there is supposed to be an update on the data, you write an update query to perform those. So there are times where you should be able to see the query and get an understanding of what it does, even if you are not writing the queries. You should look at the query and understand it. So it's very important to study SQL. Yeah. And then I'm saying that we should excel in Excel. Why am I saying this? Because Excel functions, so many I mentioned earlier, And there are functions that does the data visualization, and then the data filtering, and it has the data visualization um, capabilities as well. So it's something that you could look at. One of the first places to start your visualization is in Excel. Just using, even with your table, when you go to the recommended chart that Excel gives you, you should be able to perform some analysis with it. And then you can now go into the create a pivot table, create a pivot chart out of it. That gives you a better summary or analysis of the data. I mean, yeah, and then you dive into the BI tools, the business intelligence tools. So you could look at Tableau or Power BI for insights. And for the purposes of this course, we just be looking at Power BI, creating visualizations from Power BI. Yeah. And then we look at data visualization on its own. There are several techniques that are associated with the data visualization. I always say that it's not just about drawing a chart. What story are you telling with the chart that you are showing? It's not just about, okay, there's a pie chart. Maybe one sector or one segment has red and it has about 50%. The other has, no, it's not just about that. What story are you telling with it? It's very important. Or what insights can be drawn from it? I'll show you some examples of data visualizations that are well done, but do not really communicate the right kind of data. We'll look at some examples in the subsequent slides. And in our data analysis course, we normally have a course project that we work on, which covers all the modules. So after Excel, there'll be um, a task, a course module on it, a project on it, and then there'll be one for the SQL, and then there'll be one for the Power BI as well. And during the sessions, we'll be looking at some real world projects and how to apply the skills to solve some practical problems and scenarios. Then the last on the roadmap is continuous learning. That you can't do away with it. Once you find yourself in the tech space, continuous learning, very key. You need to stay updated with the new tools and techniques and technologies. If you slack, by the time you lift your head, you see that everyone is far gone. You are the only one left behind. And I think these days, it doesn't just apply to the tech world. It's it cuts across. You need to continuously learn because new things are coming every day. And you need to learn to apply these new things in your organizational operations, in your daily lives, in your personal, everything. Yeah. So in our course, what we do is the tools that we use, Excel, SQL, Power BI, those are the three key ones. And then for our meetings, we could use Microsoft Teams and Zoom. And then we use Miro for our collaborations. So a lot of the times we collaborate to work on tasks. Miro provides that platform where groups of people can work together on tasks. They can discuss. It creates that extended whiteboard where you can add your sticky notes, you can create diagrams. They have a lot of templates that you can use in your discussions. So we use that in our sessions as well. The key items in our sessions, very much learner-centered. It's very collaborative, where you need to source ideas from different people. And you work on live projects. It's very much hands-on. That I would say when we start going into the sessions, you'll see that it's very much hands-on. And then continuous practice. This has come up again because I think if you don't practice, you forget. No two ways about that. It's very key. You need to practice. You need to practice. We focus a lot on the learner. It's very interactive. We ask questions a lot. We allow the learner to also ask a lot of questions. It's very engaging. The whole is about helping the learner to achieve. I'll say that the style here is different from, let's say, the academic way of teaching or learning. In the academic circle, the focus is more on getting a pass or doing well. Here, it's about acquiring the skill. So it's about what do you need to be able to practice. Because there are times where your grades will get you the job, but it's the skill that will keep you in the job. If you get the job and you're unable to and use the skill that you have to get the task done, I'm not sure they are going to pay any mind to you. So it's important that the skill is developed. Yeah. So I'll talk briefly about Lean Icon, and then we now go into the various sessions on Excel, SQL, and Power BI. Just some 5 minutes on this, and then we move into action. So Lean Icon, we are training. We are leading provider of agile training and product management strategies and digital transformation. Our mission is very simple: to drive measurable change in how organizations deliver and capture value. So we have 4 categories of services. We have the software development section, the digital skills training session, which is mainly powered by the Lit Digital Academy. Then we do corporate training, that's bespoke training, which is developed to improve employee and organizational performance. And it covers both the technical skills and then the soft skills groups. And then we also do digital transformation services, where we look at enterprise agility, OKR implementation, Microsoft, looking at the whole Microsoft package, the whole suite, and then data and AI transformation. We do all of that. Inno is one of the software products that we come up with. It's a pharmaceutical product. I think I'll talk more about it in the subsequent sessions. Yeah. So that's it with Lean Icon. And then about the instructor. So the instructor is a trainer and a lecturer as well. He is a fellow of the Higher Education Academy from the UK. He doubles as an agile consultant. He hosts a skilled agile framework practice consultant. That's the SAFE SPC. Then alongside other SAFE certifications, Scrum Master, Product Owner, Product Management, Agile Software Engineering, leading SAFE for Teams, Lean Product Management. Yeah, so he has all of these. And then I also do a bit on data, the modeling, the analysis, and then the visualizations. And I'm studying as well for a PhD, working on augmented reality and artificial intelligence. So the name is Carlos Sankura. Yeah. All right. I think I've been doing a lot of talking, so then we'll just move straight into the 3 key tools. We call it the 3 key tools. The 3 key tools shown here. Each of these tools say that it plays a crucial role in the data analysis process. And together they form a powerful toolkit for any data professional. So for Excel, many of you do not need introduction to Excel. It's one of the most widely used tools in the business world, and it's incredibly versatile. So whether you are working with simple spreadsheets or complex data models, Excel's advanced functions, their pivot tables, the data visualization capabilities, make it an essential tool for organizing and analyzing data. I always say that Excel has a lot of functions that even myself have not been able to explore yet. Yeah. And then my favorite, SQL, the language of databases, that structured query language. It allows you to interact with and retrieve data from relational databases. So if you are dealing with large data sets that are stored in databases, knowing how to write SQL queries is indispensable. It is the key to extracting the exact data that you need. So as an analyst, there's all the data available. How are you able to sift through everything manually? You can't do that. So you need a language that helps you to extract the data that you need. And not just extracting the data, but extracting the right kind of data. SQL does that or helps you to do that. And then there's Power BI. So here, this is a business analytics tool that lets you visualize your data and share insights across your organization. It's quite powerful for creating dashboards, yeah, and it helps provide real-time insights into your business metrics. So with Power BI, you can connect to multiple data sources, and you could build interactive reports and dive deep into your data to uncover some hidden trends and patterns from your data. Yeah. So with this, I'll just go into the first part on Excel functions for data analysis. So what I'll do is I'll be switching between the PowerPoint and then the Excel. So we'll look at a few items here, then we'll look at how to implement it in the Excel, and then I'll switch back to the PowerPoint. So Excel is incredibly powerful. Some of the advanced functions can help you to clean your data, to organize and analyze large data sets effectively. We'll cover certain key areas on data cleaning techniques. Maybe we'll look at the lookup functions, which helps to look for information in a large spreadsheet. And then we'll look at the pivot tables and then the pivot charts as well. Yeah. So let me start with the data cleaning techniques. And this is like the first and most crucial step in data analysis. You can't swerve it. You would always have to go through this. So it ensures that your data is accurate, it's complete, and it's ready for analysis. Yeah. So suppose you have a data set with duplicate entries. You shouldn't allow those duplicates to go into the database. And even if the database has been built correctly, has been structured properly, it would identify all these duplicates and get you to remove them. But it's always better to take out these duplicates before they even try getting into the database. It's a very simple process. So I'll stop the sharing and switch to Excel to look at, then we look at how to identify duplicates in Excel. Yeah. Sharing. We open a blank spreadsheet. Let me get some sample data that we can use for this. And Control C, then Command V. So this and some data assets that we'll be looking at. When you take a look at this, it has some duplicates. If you look at it closely, you would see that this data here is duplicated. 3 and 9, row 3 and row 9. Okay, let me just zoom into this. Maybe you're not seeing that well. So row 3 and row 9 have duplicates. Row 5 and row 8 also have duplicates. Now, with the duplicates, I'm not just referring to individual fields being duplicated. It's the whole row. So the whole data contained in a row is the same for all the columns. And that is where the duplicates come in. It's not just about one cell being duplicated across other rows. Yeah. So we need to clear this out. So first of all, we'll click on any of the cells or within the range from the data set that we want to remove the duplicates. Normally, Excel would determine the range for you. So next, we'll locate the remove duplicates. That should be in the data tab. The data tab. When we go to data tab, this icon here is remove duplicates. Just beside the text to columns, this one here is remove duplicates. So I click on it, and then Excel automatically highlights the data range that it's going to search for. Then Excel says, does your list have high headers? Yes, there are headers here. The headers are the maybe the headings for the various columns. If it has it, we check this box so that it knows that there are headers, and then it excludes that. So it's going to look at all of these. So I click on OK, and then automatically it tells me that 2 duplicate values found and removed. 6 unique values remain. Then note that count may include empty cells and spaces. So you'd realize that at first we had 9 rows. Now, no, as in 8 rows. Now we have 6 rows. 2 duplicates had been removed. We identified 2. Okay. With this data set, it's just 8 rows of data. So you think that, oh, but this, I can just scan through the thing and be able to identify the duplicates and just delete them. Why do I need to go through all this duplicate process? When you have hundreds and thousands of data in a spreadsheet, I bet you can't use your eyes to look through and be able to identify all the duplicates within the sheet. So it's very important to be able to apply these kind of techniques to clean your data. And once again, I'm saying that the very first step is to identify duplicates and take them out. If you have any questions, please post them in the chat and I'll take a look at them. John and Zach, please be checking the lobby. I think usually there are some people in the lobby waiting to come in. So check the lobby and admit them in. Okay, now let's go to the next session on data cleaning techniques. Yeah. So here we are going to look at text functions to clean data. And Excel provides functions that can help you to clean and standardize your data. Some functions like trim, upper and lower to convert the case. Trim would remove extra spaces. Left, right, mid helps to retrieve or extract a specified number of characters from a text string. Concat or concatenate joins two or more text strings into one. And then there's the text to columns, which is used to split data into different columns. So we'll look at some examples of these two as well. Let me just go into the Excel sheet. Let me create a new sheet here. And then we look at some examples of that. Yeah. So the text function, the first one that we saw was trim. Okay. Why is trim important? Because there are times where you find either leading or trailing white spaces in your text that is going into the database. Because maybe after typing a name or something, the person has put some spaces at the end of the text and they are not supposed to be there. It's good to trim out these spaces from the beginning or the end before it enters into the database. So we'll look at how this function works. It's very simple. It's very easy to do. So let's say, okay, let me copy this data here. So this is a sample data set. I'm pasting that in B. So estimation time saves 9. So this is the data that we have. We are going to see how we can trim this data so that we would take out all the white spaces from the data. It's very simple. Just a simple function. We'll say equals trim. And then the cell that we are referencing. In this case, we are going for B2. No, B2. And then we hit enter. It has removed the beginning spaces out of here. But how can we be so sure that there were some spaces there anyway? Let's do something. Let me insert a new cell. And then we look at the number of characters that were in here, and then we compare it to the number of characters that are in the trimmed text. Then we'll see if really the text have been removed or we are just hiding it somewhere. So how do we determine the length or the number of characters in a text? Equals len length and B2. So this shows us that there are 42 characters here. Let's do the same thing for this. len D2. Yeah. D2 like that. And then we hit enter. Now we have 28. So how many characters have we taken out from this? 42 minus 28. That's 14. 14 extraneous characters have been taken out from this just by writing a simple function called trim. Very easy. Let's drag it and apply it to all the others. So here we have 50 characters. Let me see. Okay, so they are beginning and trailing text. And this, there are some trailing text. And this, there are some, okay. So let's trim all this as well. It's the same function, so we just drag it and it does the trimming. And we'll see the number of characters for all of them. All of them have been trimmed to 28. So if not for this trimming, you see that these are the kinds of data that would have been going into our database. And you are going to be performing analysis based on this kind of data. But with a very simple function, we've removed all those extraneous white spaces and we are left with proper data that, or accurate data that can go into our database, right? Yeah, that was a very simple one. Which other function are we to look at? The upper and lower. Okay, so this one is also very simple, where we convert the text either to uppercase or lowercase. Why do we need to do that? There are times where people fill forms and um, let's say they are filling form. You don't want to write an apple, and then the person will write something like this. I think it's a joke, but it actually happens. People do this kind of things when they are filling forms. You find people writing like this, yeah, and something like this. So when this goes into your database, I mean, there should be some cleaning, whether you are converting it into some uppercase or lowercase. Most people like to convert to lowercase so that when they are going to display it in a report, they now apply whatever formatting they can apply to it. So simply we could apply our lower or upper to this. So it's also a very simple process. Let's say we are converting this to uppercase. So we say equals upper. And then we cite the cell reference. In this case, is B7, and we convert it to upper. We want to convert this to lower, and lower. And then that is what B8, B8. Done. So I've seen people, okay, so for example, you might be looking at this and say, but this one, you can just click on the apple and then type the apple the way you want and correct it. Yes, you can do that, but if you are working with a large set of data, maybe for email address, email address, the standard formatting for email address is always in lowercase. And then you have people using mixed cases all over. If you want to apply the lowercase, so you can just write a simple formula like this and it applies and apply it to the whole column. It converts all the email addresses to a lowercase, and then it goes into the database. Far much better than having this kind of data in your database, right? And then left, right, mid. Okay. So with the left, right, mid, what happens is you have some text, especially in situations where several categories of text have been combined together in one field or in one cell. So you see that in some instances, first name and last name are all together, but you might want to extract the first name from the last name and all of that. So these functions helps you to extract text depending on the location or where you are extracting from, either from the beginning, from the middle, or from the end. So let's take a sample data set. Let's say, okay, let me just type something here. ABC. So ABC, let's see. So I'm going to apply all three functions, left, right, and then right on ABC, and then some other text that we could look at. So for left, we are going to do equals left, and then the text reference here is D11. D11. By default, if I don't specify the number of characters I'm extracting, it's going to extract only one. So let's look at that. It extracts only A. But then most of the time it's important to specify the number of characters that you are extracting. So one would give me A as well. The same thing for mid. Okay, let me take another example of the left. Let me use the same ABC. This time I would use a different number of characters to extract. So left E12. We're extracting 2 characters here, and then from the left, and it gives us AB. Let me take Tuesday. I'm extracting the first 3 letters of the days of the week. So Tuesday, I'm going for left and B13, comma, and then 3. And then I get it's a very simple one. So if you have, let's say, the days of the weekend, you just want to display only the first 3 characters. You don't have to be editing the individual cells and be deleting the other characters. You can just apply a function like this and it runs to the same for mid. So mid will do equals mid, but mid has a different structure. Okay, let me do right first before I come to mid, because mid is a little different from left and right. So right, the same format, I'll do right, and then what is the cell? B11, B11, 1. I'm expecting to see C, and then equals right, it's equals right, and B12. Number of characters, we go for 2. I'm expecting to see DC here. Let's apply the same thing. 3 characters from the right. We'll do equals right. B13, no, B13, 3. And then we hit enter, we have D. Now mid works differently. So mid would have to indicate the starting character and then the number of characters that you are extracting. So maybe let me just apply mid to the Tuesday so that you can see better, because all these will just show you 1 character. Okay, let me do for ABC first. So equals mid B11. The starting character will be number 2. How many characters do I need to take? Let's say 2 characters. And then I close. And then it gives me BC. What happens if the number of characters specified exceeds? Let's look at that. So equals mid B12. B12. The starting number is 2. And then the number of characters, let me say 4. And then it gives me BC, because after C, there are no more characters. So it ignores the extra number of characters and just picks the one that falls within the range. Let's try the last one here. Mid B13, the starting number, let's say we go for 3. How many characters do we want? We want 5 characters. And then it gives us SD. So this is a good tool, and it helps to extract a number of characters from a text string. And yeah, so once you specify the number of characters, you are able to extract that. Another way of doing this extraction it's the text to columns. Okay, before I go to the text to columns, let me talk about the concat or concatenating. Concatenating joins two or more strings into one. So you combine strings. So I'll do concatenation, then I'll do the splitting of a text into two separate columns. So concat, with concat, let's say I have Mr. Bob, Mr. Bob Smith. I want to put the text all three together so that I have Mr. Bob Smith without the individual cells. So I'll do something like this. Equal concat. And I open my bracket. You need to specify the cells that that contain the text that you are putting together. So the first one is B15. B15, that's the first cell, comma, B15, comma, B15. Now this is going to display the text all together, and then we'll apply some formatting to it. So we hit enter and it puts everything together, Mr. Bob Smith. Now, okay, so there's a space here, so we'll get it this way. So Mr. Bob Smith, but maybe you don't want it to display this way. You want it to be formatted in a way. You realize that initially there was a trailing text, a trailing white space after Mr. in B15. So there was a space in between this. So maybe you want to introduce the space for between Mr. and Bob, and then Bob and Smith. And we can edit this. Okay, let me just copy this. And then I paste it. And then I go into edit by inserting a blank space. And then it changes it to Mr. Bob Smith with the spaces in between. So that's a very simple way to put text together. And it does the same thing with numbers. So let's see if I have 12, 34, and then 56. When I concatenate it, it's not going to add it. It's rather just going to put them together as one text. So another way of doing the concatenate is concat, and then I specify the range. So I'll say D17 to D17, and then I close it. And then it puts the text together as 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. You see that the difference here is, here I just specified the range. So if they are all in one line, either in one row or one column, you can do this, or else you can use this format which identifies the individual cells that you want to put together or you want to concatenate. Yeah. And the concat function, there's concat and there's concatenate. Concatenate was the earlier one, and then it got upgraded to concat. I think the difference is concatenate doesn't take the range. It only uses the individual cells to put them together. It doesn't take a range of values. Yeah. Then the last one, the text to columns, which is used to split data into different columns. Yeah. Okay. Let me just copy some sample text here and then look at it. So this is some sample text here. So this a data set that combines maybe the first name and the last name. But in our database, we have a separate attribute or column for first name, a separate attribute for last name. So we can't put the two together. And usually it's even better to split it so that if you need to display the full name, you can just put it together by doing a concatenate rather than having all in one cell and then you'll be struggling to split it in case you need only the first names or only the last names. So it's always important to keep them. So in database, we call it atomicity. Atomicity. So you need to break down the value that is going into the database into its simplest form. Yeah. How do we convert this data into different columns or split it into different columns? We have two formats, that's the fixed and then the delimited. For the purpose of this session, we would use the delimited method. So we'll select the column that we want to split. And then on the data tab, we see text to columns. So we click on text to columns. It brings up a wizard of 3 stages or 3 steps. The first is to, so this step has determined that your data is delimited. What's the difference? This one has commas or tabs separating the field. Using the fixed way, the fields are aligned in columns with spaces between each field. So we'll just go with the delimited format. So we go next, and then it tells us how the text are being separated. Here we have a space in between the text. So we only use a space. You see, originally it was just a tab and it didn't show anything. If it's a semicolon that is separating, you go for semicolon. If it's a comma, you go for comma. Here we are using space, so we only check the space box and then uncheck tab. And you see automatically it has split. It has given us a preview of how the data is going to look like when we do the splitting. Yeah. So we go next. And then this screen tells us the data formats for each of them. Here is just text data, so we can just keep it as general. Assuming we had dates or other formats, we would want to format the data in a particular way. So we'll just go with this, and both of them general. And then we click on finish. It split our text into 2 separate columns for us. And very simple and easy, I guess. Right. Okay, I've been doing a lot of talking. And I wanted to go into the pivot tables, but I'm looking at the time. We have a bit of SQL to look at. We have a bit of Power BI to look at also. Let me check if there are any questions in the chat. Oh, my screen is not showing. Really? Okay, someone says, can you go over the cleaning of data part on the Excel? Oh, sorry, I missed all of this. Okay, let me just go back quickly and brush through those sections. So the data cleaning, I was saying that the data cleaning, there are various techniques of cleaning the data. Either you are looking for duplicates or blank, or handling the blank sections by removing those blank sections in the data. So when you're removing the duplicates, that's where I showed that you can go to the data tab. So we used this for that. Yeah, so we selected we didn't even select, we actually just clicked in the data and then we went into the data tab, and then there's the icon there that says remove duplicates. So you can see it here. I click on it, it selects that. It asks if I have headers on my data set. I say okay, and then because the duplicates have already been removed, so it says no duplicates found. So simple. Click in the data set, go to the data tab here, data tab, click on the remove duplicates icon, and then that's all. Yeah, I think that's another question. This is what. Okay, this one said that my screen wasn't showing. I don't know. Can you confirm if you can see my screen? If you can see, just type yes or something in the chat. Yeah. Will the recording be sent to us? Yes, the recording will be made available, I think. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. The recording will be made available. How about the data sheet? This one is just some random data that I'm putting in. They are not any serious data. Yeah. Okay, I think some people cannot see my. Maybe those of you who can't see it, maybe you should move out and come back in. Okay, so I can make the data set available, no problem. I can make it available to you. Yeah. Okay. Okay, yeah. So let's move on quickly. We have less time. I wanted to talk about pivot table because this means that it's a practical as in progress. No, I'm not sure I understand that very well. Can you please clarify? Okay. I'm sure we can learn it later. It's in reference to the data sheet, right? I guess so. Okay. So I'm flipping over to the pivot table. The pivot table is a tool in Excel. First, I didn't really see the functionality of pivot table, but later I realized, this is a good way a basic way to summarize and analyze your data set or even explore large data sets quickly. It's very interactive and it analyzes numerical data in detail. It helps you to answer unanticipated questions about your data. The good thing about this is with very little effort, sometimes no formulas. You don't even have to type formulas, and you can look at the same data from many different perspectives. So many different perspectives. You just drag and drop. You can do aggregation like sum, average, count, max, mean. And then it allows you to filter and slice the data. So you narrow down the data to specific categories or time frames using what you call filters and slices. So this is sample data and that's out. Let me see. Okay. Let me just go through this briefly and then we can see if we can build a chart out of it and before we switch to SQL. And where's the Excel? Another sample set of data that I'm going to put in here. Let me create a new sheet. Paste. So this data set you see here is just a sample for demonstration purposes. It contains about 452 records. Yeah, okay. And then with 5 fields of information, there's date, there's color, there's region, there's units, there's sales. Okay. So when you look at this, you might want to perform some analysis of this data that you see here. What can you do, or how do you even understand the data? So there's a date, and there's a color, there's a region, there are units, there are sales. The simplest way I can talk about this is a sales data from a company that is selling a product. So these are the color of the product. Let's say if it's a bicycle, this is the color of the bicycle that was sold in the color section. Then the region, maybe they have branches in various places. So this is the region. How many units were sold? and how much sales were made. And these are the days that the sales were made. It's a wide set of data. As it is like this, sometimes it could be difficult to make some inferences out of the data. So what can we do? We can use a pivot table to create simple summary or simple analysis of the data. What do we do? So first off, we start off, click anywhere in the cell, or anywhere in the data, and then we go to look for our pivot table. Where do we find our pivot table? Insert, and then there's pivot table. On my Excel, it's at the left, left corner. So I click on pivot table. Then Excel determines the range of the data. It determines the range of the data by default. And I'll keep it at that. Then it says choose where to place the pivot table. Do I want it in a new worksheet or in an existing worksheet? I'd want to keep it in this same sheet so that when we make any changes, we see how it's applied. So I keep it in existing worksheet. Where do I want to place it? Maybe you should start from G4. Yeah, it should start from G4. That's the table range place. Then I click on OK. Yeah, it has created a blank pivot table. A blank pivot table with no information. When we look at the right side, this is where we are now going to create pivot table fields. So we are going to create the fields here on how we want the data to be displayed. So the first thing, we'll drag sales because maybe we'll do one for sales, one for units. Let's start with the sales. So I'll drag sales into the values because that's what we want to look at. And then automatically it gives us the grand total of sales that for all the regions, for all the units, for all the colors. You see it displayed here. But this is not what you want. This is not what you want. You want it in a different way. So you want to see how many of the colors were sold at a point in time and all of that. So I go for color. I drag color into rows. Then it shows me, okay, so for blue color, this was the sum of sales, for green, for red, and then that. This is giving you some insight that originally you would not have easily extracted from this data, right? Okay. You can choose to rather use the region. So I go for region and bring it here, and I see it in another format. Just by dragging and dropping, you're able to perform some analysis on the data, right? What of maybe you want a two-way data set where I can see both the region and the color. So I can drag the color into the columns. Then it gives me a different perspective of the data. So in the East, these are the number of blue products that were sold, green, and then the total, and for each of them, like that. Simple, isn't it? Yeah, I think so. So with this, you can play around. Let me move the sales. Let me bring in units insert. How many units of the products were sold? It gives you. So it's what I like about it is you can filter and play around with it just by dragging and dropping and changing the items in it. There are times where you can even let me see, where do I put that? Let me bring in date into the columns. Yeah. So here I bring in the dates to show the various years that. Okay, let me move this up, the date up. So the date can be displayed in quarters, in months, in years, indeed in several other formats. You can always work with the data sets that you have. For me, I think the pivot tables are exciting. It's easy to look at. Yeah. So let me take out this. I'll create a chart out of this, and then we'll see how to use what you call the and what's the name of this? The slices and then the timelines. Yeah, the slices and the timelines. We'll look at how to do that. So let me take out this. Take out this. Take out the date. Yeah. Okay, so just the years alone would give us something like this. So for blue, you see these are the years that blue, how much sales we made with for the various years under blue, and then it goes through all of that. And there's something I think I noticed. Aha. Now, when you take a close look at this data set, you'd realize that silver doesn't have 2016 and 2017. Probably the silver color wasn't introduced early. So there was the blue, green, and red, which was introduced in 2016, and then silver was introduced in 2018, 2019. That's how come we don't have for silver for 2016, 2017. So there are several ways that you can draw some inferences from the data set that you see there. Okay. Then quickly, let's go to the pivot chart. I can use the same data set to create the pivot chart. So I go click anywhere in the cell, insert a chart, pivot chart, and then it creates some kind of a chart for me based on this. Okay, so for this chart, I'm not sure I need the year. It's too clumsy. With visualization, your chart has to be very simple so that people can make some inferences out of it. So yeah, so this is a simplified chart based on this table by just one click, and it does that for me. And I can always make the changes. Let me bring sales back. And then it creates a different chart based on this. When I edit a text, let's say the sales value, this one 104, let me change it to 120, let's say. And then I come here and then I refresh. I don't even remember. Okay, that was green. When we look at green, when we take note of green, we'll see that the values for green would change after I refresh. Yeah, so this one, 1694 wasn't there, it changed to something else. It was something else, then it changed to 1694. So with the pivot tables, once you make any updates, it reflects in the table, it reflects in the chart at once. Yeah, it's cool like that. Then the last bit on slices. And this, just additional ways of formatting your data. No, filtering your data, rather. Filtering your data. And so that it gives you some additional. So I click on anywhere in the table. I go to insert slicer. Then it asks me, how do I want my slicer? What categories? So I want maybe color and then sales. I want to be able to filter based on color and sales. So, no, not color and sales. No, I don't want sales. Let me take this out. I want color and region. So let's insert another slicer. I go to the pivot table, analyze, insert slicer. Let me add the region instead. Yeah. So this shows that region and color, they are all selected. So if I want to see just information about the East region, I click on East and then it gives me only information about East and then the graph with respect to East with all the colors. Or I want to see how silver alone is doing in East. So I can check that. Or maybe in comparison with green, I click on this, then I can do a multi-select. So silver and green with East alone. Do I want to compare with maybe South? Okay, let's see South. And then I can compare East and South, the data from green and silver on East and South. Very simple, very easy. For me, I like the flexibility with it. You can do so many other things with it. That's what I like about this whole thing. Yeah. Then let me do the last one on the timelines, in certain timelines. Where is it? So I click on in the pivot table, I go to insert timeline. It mostly works with date, so I check the date works, and then it gives me that. So with the timeline, you can use the dates to display data for a particular region. I don't want the month, so I'll change it to years. So this is showing all 4 years from 2016. Maybe I want only 2016. It shows that, or I want only 2018 data. I want only 2019 data. So once you click, it gets changed, and then you're able to see how the products have been performing in the various years. If you want all, you can still click and then you get everything at once. Yeah. So that's it for the bit on Excel. I've taken too much time. Excel is exciting, so I think I just got carried away with all the things we can do with Excel. Yeah. Okay. Oh, sorry, someone couldn't see clearly, but I believe I zoomed in and you were able to see that. Okay. So let me switch to SQL, also a very interesting one. And get some water, sorry. Okay, so for SQL, I'm not going to go very deep into SQL because of the time constraints. I'll just touch on bits of it, and then we look at how to write a few queries, and then I flip to data visualization techniques with Power BI, and then we'll close the session. We need to be out of here by 6. Yeah. So, so SQL, it's the I'll say it's the language that may be considered to be one of the reasons why relational databases became very successful in the commercial world. The name SQL is derived from structured query language. Structured query language. Originally, SQL was called SQL. That's Structured English Query Language. It became the standard language for commercial relational databases. It's quite comprehensive. Some people refer to it as a programming language. I'm not too sure if I would want to classify SQL as a programming language, but it has statements for defining data, for creating a database, for querying the data, and for updating the data. So once there's a database and a relational database and you need to interact with it, SQL is key. It's an essential tool for anyone that's looking to retrieve and analyze data from data sets efficiently. But what is a database? Someone would be wondering. My simple definition is a collection of data. It's a collection of data As simple as that. But what kind of data? The data should be related. It's not just any random data we put together and then we call it a database. No, it should be related data. Why am I saying it should be stored electronically? Because I can take a book and then I can put my collection of data in it. But then the way the database would work electronically would be different from how it will work in the book. Electronically, it's often stored in tables that's in rows and columns, like it's done in the spreadsheet, like in Excel. It's kind of very similar to that. Now, we also say that the data should be logically structured. We can't just pick data about employee, data about students, data about a country, and then put them together and say, okay, it's a collection of related data. So yes, that is the database. No, there should be some logical structure to the data. What are the key components of the database? There are tables. So a database is made up of tables, which holds data in rows and columns, like in spreadsheet, as I mentioned. The rows represent the individual entries, and then the columns represent the attributes or the properties of the data that you are storing about these individual entries. Then relationships, related data. So the data would be related, so you can form relationships out of it. The tables may be related to each other through what we call the keys, either the primary key or the foreign key. Yeah. So that's one thing about databases. I've spoken about SQL. Some of the key functions, they are good for data retrieval, for data manipulation. Retrieval, where we query the database to retrieve specific data. And I think once the database has been created, this is the function that would mostly be used on the data, retrieving the data. They'll be inserting data anyway, yeah, usually through an application program. So when you fill a form through an application program, the insert query will pick out all the items that you've entered in the various fields and then dump it into the into the database. Yeah. Yeah, so it can do the insert, you can update. SQL can help you to delete the data in databases. We call that the data manipulation. Then the data definition is where we create and modify the database structures. So here you create the database, you create the tables, and you create some indexes to the data and even the views to the data as well. SQL can be used for data control, where we manage access and permissions in databases. Remember I said that there could be several users for a database, but not all the users have access to all the aspects of the data in the database. So it's quite important. There are several examples of databases. I wanted to use this case study to do a demonstration. This is just a fictional business entity that rents out movies to its members. It's been storing its records manually, so they decided to have a database for its members and the rentals. The entities that were identified were this. So there's members entity or table, which is supposed to store the information of the members. There's movies, which would store information regarding the movies. Then there are the categories. So the movies are placed into various categories such as drama, action, epic, adventure, any others. And then there's the movie rentals, which would take information about the movies being rented out to members. And then there's the payment information about payments here. Yeah, I'm just rushing through because this whole process, when you're modeling the data, that is when you do all this process, identifying the various entities and then the attributes. The attributes are displayed here. This diagram, we call it the entity relationship diagram, ERD. So these are the entities, or let's say, I'll put it like the objects that you can collect data about. These are that. And then these are the attributes or the properties of the data. So for members, you need maybe a membership number, the full name. If I'm creating this database, I'll split it into first name and last name, and the gender, the date of birth, address. I think over here there was email and something. Yeah. Then for the movies, you have an ID for the movie, and the title of the movie, the director, the year it was released, and then a category of the movie. Remember, we mentioned category as drama, action, and all of that. And that is related to this entity. So this is where the relationship comes in. So a movie belongs to a category. And remember, when renting out a movie, we have to make payments. So there's payments relation between members and payments. This is where the relationships comes in. So most of the entities would have to be related to 2 or 3 or some other entities. Yeah. These ones you see here are the data types, the types of data that will be stored for each of the attributes. So there's the VARCHAR, the date. I can't go into all of this. Yeah. Integer and all of that. Yeah. So that's just it. Okay, let me switch to. Let me see if there are any questions. Okay, no. Let me switch to the MySQL Workbench. Okay, I'm just using MySQL for display purposes. MySQL, or I normally use MySQL or Oracle or the what we call the SSNS. That's the SQL Server Management Studio. Yes, they provide the interfaces where you can work on the data. So the data is actually stored in a server. So I installed the server separately, and then this MySQL Workbench is just providing the interface. I'm using just a local host. Local host meaning that the server is on my machine, and then the client that I'm using to access the interface is also on my machine. So yeah. So on localhost, I'm able to access the various data sets. Okay, so this sample of queries. At this stage, you might see this and be like, hey, what is this and all of that. But once you go through the course, you would understand that, oh, okay, it's not any giddy thing. It's something that you can read and understand. Let's look at the first line. It says, create database. At the top here, it says create. Let me see if I can zoom. There's a zoom thing. Okay. No, not this. I can't find the zoom. Okay. This zoom. I can't find the zoom for this thing. Zoom. Okay. Yeah. Here we go. So the first line says create database. The name of the database is MyFlexDB. The instruction says if it does not exist, then go ahead and create it. That means that if it exists, don't create it. Why are we saying you shouldn't create it? Because the names of the database are unique. You can't have two databases or two or more databases with the same name. So it tells you that this is the instruction. If it does not exist, don't create it. Some people can just use create database this and it will create it. So let's try something. Let me create a new file. It says create database. The database will be called what? Data analysis class. Then I end with a semicolon. I run this. Now take a look at this. We didn't have a data analysis class here. When I refresh, I have a new database called data analysis class. Just by writing this one-line statement, create database data analysis class, and then it creates a database for me. It should contain tables. I've not created tables yet, so there's nothing in there. Let me see if I can just copy some sample table. This is the movie thing. Where's members? Okay, yes, I can get it from here. So let me copy from create table up to the primary key. Then I'll come and tell it to use this database because there are other databases. You need to specify which database you want to use to perform your queries or to use for your operations. And then I come down and I paste this, but I'd want to edit this a little. Okay, the members, there's a membership number, fine. There's a name, there's a gender. Okay, let me change this to first name, then last name. I don't like the, oops. Okay, first name. And then the last name. And then the last name. Okay, yeah. Gender, date of birth, physical address, postal address, contact number, email. Yeah. Okay. So these are the attributes of that table. These are the data types: integer, varying characters. First name, or these names can have varying characters. The limit here is 350, meaning that we are saying that the name cannot be more than 350 characters, right? Yes. So there's date, and then there's the null, and then the not null. Not null means some of these ones cannot be blank. So just like when you are filling form and there's the required and then the not required, it's the same concept here. And this would, when I run this, I'll get an error because there's some brackets missing. Yeah, let me close it. Yeah. So there was a red sign here. Let me take it off. There was a red sign here to show that there's an error over here. I realized that there was a bracket closed here, opened here, which had not been closed. And SQL is very sensitive to those kind of things. And we always end our queries with a semicolon. Semicolon is like the full stop for a sentence. It shows the end of the query, right? So I didn't run this, so it would use the data analysis and okay, yeah. You see that there's an output action table here, action output, which shows a status of all the operations or the queries that I ran. You find it here. So the first one, it shows that I created a database. Then it says, okay, use data analysis class. Now let's run this query. I select it, I highlight it, and then I run it, and it creates the table. Let's be sure if the table has been created. I can see some warning over there about some integer display, but I think it was still created. So we have members created. That is it. How do we make sure that there's something in it. So I can do select star from members. This is supposed to display the list of all the members in the database. As of now, I've not inserted any data, so I don't expect to see anything. So I run this and it shows a table, a blank table with the table headers, but no data in it. Yeah. So this SQL at play, I have less than less than 7 minutes. So I might just pause on this, but this is how we work with SQL. A database created, and then we're able to extract data out of it. Let me run that quickly. I couldn't do the Power BI, but yeah. So with Power BI, there are several types of visualizations that can be created. Now, remember I said that you need to tell a story. So you don't just pick any data type and then we say that we are creating a visualization out of it. Every type of visualization communicates some kind of information. So it's something that the data analyst should check. For example, it's not everything that can be displayed with a pie chart, for example. So we need to look at that. Then we create dashboards where we combine various charts. Power BI can do that easily for us, and they can make it interactive too. Yeah. I had some exercise that I wanted us to do, but I'm not sure we have the right time for that. So for example, this a data from chat. I think this on CO2 emissions, which countries emit more. Now, someone can display the data in this format. We'll be okay with it. Oh, okay. There's China, there's US and blah, 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 and then there's the other countries. Now, the problem here is this. When you compare China and other, you are not really able to tell which one is bigger. And this is one thing people have, the issue people have with pie charts. When there are so many columns to compare, sometimes it becomes difficult when you're comparing. Rather, you can display your data in this format in bar charts, and then it shows, here you can actually see that all the other countries here is 31.5, and then China is more. So, yeah. And another one is displaying a bar chart with so many columns. In the horizontal way, you see that some of the items are missing. Some of the items might not be labeled, but rather you can change it to vertical, yeah. And then this here is just too much information. You can't really make much meaning out of it. Oh, and this too, when you look at this, you think it's a huge gap between product one and product two based on the number of sales. But in actual sense, it's not that huge. It's because here the chart was started at 70 instead of 0. So it gives an impression that there's a huge gap here, but it might not actually be the case. This one too, it's just random data put together. Can't really tell. Yeah. So, there was a lot I wanted us to look at with respect to visualization, but yeah, I can't go beyond 6. And this so this a kind of chart that would actually be deceptive because it calculates the annual revenue. This is giving you a cumulative annual revenue, which would always be going up because yeah, it's adding on to it. But when you look at the year-on-year data, you see that the annual revenue is actually coming down. So even though this chart is right, no problem with it, it's not communicating the right kind of information. So yeah. So I'll skip the last on the so yeah, at Late we ran this course on data analysis, and these are the outlines where we go much deeper than what I've shown you on data analysis. We look at the intro, the basics and data management. We look at more advanced functions and then data analysis tools. Then we go into the SQL where we do more than what we saw. And then we go into the Power BI. Then the last bit, we integrate all the three together and how it can work together. Okay, speaking about this. So, if you want to become a certified data analyst, we are here for you. You can enroll on our course. Just visit our website, www.leanicontechnology.com. Then you can register, or you can call these numbers, and then you speak to our sales rep, and then we have discussions with them. I think our next course starts from the 8th of October. We are very flexible because we are looking at both people who are working and not working. We are going for the evening sessions, but we can still arrange something for the daytime sessions too for our courses. And then we run other courses as well. If you want to become a software developer, we are there for you. We have what we call the Agile Software Development course, where we train people in front end, back end, mobile, testing and quality assurance, product management, and business analysis as well. So if you want to become a mobile app developer, just visit our website or call these numbers. And then we train business analysts to those who would want to become business analysts. So yeah. Let me see if there are any questions there from you. Okay, none from here. So these are the courses, and then you can please visit our website and or any of our socials, Instagram, and just search for Lean Icon Technology, and you find more information about us. You can call this number and talk to our guys, and we would sort you out. If it's not data analysis you want, if you want to be a developer, either front end or back end, if you want to be a business analyst, if you want to do mobile development, or if you want to go into the product, so product owner, product manager side too, we are there for you.